When you find yourself dealing with someone with avoidant tendencies, the biggest temptation is to chase. It feels natural, even logical, to want to close the gap, to want to reassure them, to make them see your worth through your effort. But the more you chase, the more you hand over your power, and the more you teach them that they can retreat without consequence because you'll always come running. Chasing might feel like connection in the moment, but in reality it creates distance. The avoidant doesn't experience your pursuit as love, they experience it as pressure. And pressure to an avoidant is like oxygen to a fire. It makes them pull back even harder, almost instinctively, because their greatest fear is being trapped or losing independence. If you want an avoidant to lean in, you have to resist that urge to chase, even when it feels uncomfortable. Chasing gives them control, but stepping back creates intrigue. Think of it like this: when you are always available, always responding instantly, always explaining and re-explaining, there is no mystery left. The dynamic becomes predictable, and predictability to an avoidant often equals boredom or suffocation. But when you slow down your responses, when you take a step back, when you allow silence to exist, something changes in their psychology. They start to wonder where you've gone, why you're not knocking at the door, why you've stopped filling the space. That curiosity is the first spark of attraction and obsession. It isn't about playing games, it's about shifting the pattern so you're no longer feeding into the cycle that pushes them away. Chasing also has a subtle but damaging effect on your own self-image. Every time you chase, you're reinforcing the belief that their attention is more valuable than your peace. You're saying, even unconsciously, I'll run after you because I need you more than I need myself. And when you send that signal, the avoidant doesn't admire you for it, they start to take it for granted. People rarely value what comes too easily. If you want to create a shift in their behavior, you have to create a shift in yours. Stop chasing, not because you want to punish them, but because you want to protect your energy and reclaim your dignity. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you remind yourself that you are the prize, not the pursuer. Avoidants often come alive when they sense they might lose something valuable. If they know you'll always be there, waiting, begging, pleading, then there is no urgency for them to act differently. But when you stop chasing, you reintroduce risk into the equation. Suddenly, your absence becomes noticeable. They start to question whether they've miscalculated. That's when they lean forward, not because you begged, but because they felt the cost of your silence. In that way, stopping the chase doesn't just restore balance, it creates the exact conditions for them to pursue you. It flips the dynamic from you being the one proving your worth to them being the one realizing yours. So much of attraction with avoidance is about energy. When your energy is desperate, chasing, overflowing in their direction, it makes them retreat. When your energy is calm, centered, and not dependent on their reaction, it makes them curious. Stopping the chase is really about reclaiming your power and remembering that someone else's avoidance isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their fear. And the only way to make them step into that fear and confront it is to give them space to feel the absence of your constant pursuit. That's when they stop running and start noticing what they might lose. Silence is often misunderstood. Most people fear it, rushing to fill the gaps in conversation with explanations, reassurances, or nervous chatter. Yet silence, when embraced with confidence, becomes one of the most powerful tools you can use in relationships, especially with someone who has avoidant tendencies. When you stop rushing to fill the air, you give space for curiosity, reflection, and even desire to grow. An avoidant who is naturally drawn to distance suddenly feels the pull of your restraint. They begin to notice what is missing when you are not constantly trying to bridge the gap for them. Think about the way we react in a crowded room. The loudest person might capture attention for a moment, but the person who sits back, listens, and only speaks when they have something meaningful to say commands respect. Their words are weighted differently because they are not competing for attention. With avoidance, the same principle applies. When you hold back and let silence breathe, you give them the chance to come forward instead of constantly retreating. The absence of noise from your side makes them wonder what you are thinking, what you are doing, and why you are not playing the same old game of pursuit. Silence also shifts the power dynamic. Most of us are conditioned to believe that if someone pulls away, we need to chase harder, explain more, or prove our worth. But that is exactly what makes an avoidant comfortable. They know you will always close the gap for them. The moment you stop talking, stop pleading, and simply allow the silence to stand, they feel something unusual. They no longer have the reassurance of your constant energy, and that unsettles them. Suddenly, you are not predictable anymore. Your restraint introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is what makes people lean in to figure you out. More importantly, silence protects your dignity. It allows you to stand tall instead of lowering yourself into a pattern of over-explaining. It says without words that you are not afraid to let someone sit with their own choices. If they distance themselves, you won't chase. If they retreat, you won't break yourself trying to pull them back. Silence communicates strength in ways that words never could. It shows that your value is not dependent on their immediate validation. It shows you have the patience and confidence to let things unfold without force. But silence is not about punishment or playing games. It is not about ignoring someone out of spite. It is about knowing that you don't need to fill every moment with proof of your worth. It is about giving both yourself and the other person the freedom to breathe. In relationships with avoidance, that breathing room is often what brings them closer because they don't feel suffocated by pressure. Instead of seeing you as someone who needs them to stay, they begin to see you as someone who chooses them, but could just as easily continue thriving without them. In the end, silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that your life, your energy, and your value don't depend on constant validation from another person. When you embrace silence with strength, you create mystery, you inspire respect, and you allow others, especially avoidants, to lean in, not because you chase them, but because the absence of your words spoke louder than anything you could have said. Presence is one of the most underrated forms of communication, yet it carries more weight than almost anything we can say. With avoidance, this truth becomes even more powerful. An avoidant personality often retreats from too much talking, too much emotional pressure, or too many explanations. They are not drawn to constant words. They are drawn to an energy that feels calm, secure, and self-contained. When you stop relying on what you say and instead cultivate how you show up, your presence speaks louder than any speech you could give. Think about the people who command a room without uttering a word. They walk in and immediately you feel something about them. Confidence, calm, charisma. That is presence. And presence isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about embodying the value you already have, holding yourself with dignity, and refusing to let desperation spill into your actions. With avoidance, this presence shifts the balance. Instead of flooding them with words they will avoid, you create an atmosphere where they feel compelled to pay attention because your energy holds space instead of filling it with noise. When you overtalk, you strip your words of impact. The more you explain, justify, or repeat yourself, the less powerful your message becomes. Avoidants especially pick up on this. They sense when someone is trying to convince them, and it activates their instinct to withdraw. But if you sit comfortably in silence, if you allow pauses instead of rushing to fill them, it shows self-assurance. You are not afraid of emptiness because you trust that your presence is enough. This is deeply attractive to someone whose natural instinct is to pull away from intensity. Presence also requires alignment between what you say and what you do. Imagine someone saying, "I'm fine without you," while clearly checking their phone every minute, chasing replies, and sharing on social media. Their words lose credibility because their actions betray their insecurity. But when your actions and energy back up your independence, you no longer need to declare it, you live it. And that quiet confidence is more convincing than any speech. An avoidant may not respond to your words, but they cannot ignore the consistency of your behavior and the gravity of your presence. It's also worth noting that presence builds mystery. When you don't rush to fill every silence, when you don't explain every feeling, you leave room for curiosity. An avoidant, who is often more comfortable in distance, begins to wonder about you in that space. They ask themselves, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why are you not pushing? That curiosity creates a pull. Instead of obsessing over their next move, you become the person they are drawn to figure out. because your presence leaves questions unanswered. Ultimately, presence over words is about reclaiming power. It is about realizing that you do not need to win someone over with constant effort. You only need to stand in your own value with the quiet strength of someone who knows they are enough. Avoidance will sense it because presence bypasses their defenses in a way words never could. Words can be dismissed, arguments can be ignored, but presence is undeniable. It lingers, it speaks in silence, and it leaves an impression that no amount of chasing could ever achieve. Living fully without them is not about pretending you don't care, and it's not about playing some manipulative game to get attention. It's about shifting your focus back to the one person you have complete control over yourself. When someone pulls away or acts distant, it's easy to feel like the solution is to close the gap with more words, more effort, or more sacrifice. But the truth is, when you make them the center of your universe, you lose the very energy that makes you magnetic in the first place. The most attractive quality a person can have is self-possession, that quiet assurance that their life is rich and meaningful regardless of who steps in or out of it. When you pour into your own world, you stop looking like someone waiting for scraps of attention, and instead you become someone whose value radiates naturally. Think about what happens when you redirect your attention into your passions. When you fill your days with things that bring you joy, whether that's working on a project, building your health, nurturing your friendships, or exploring new experiences, you give yourself momentum. You're no longer standing still, hoping for them to move towards you. You're in motion, and that motion is powerful. People feel it. An avoidant, who is used to being pursued, starts to notice when you don't fill the silence with effort. They notice when you're not at their doorstep emotionally asking for validation. And in that space, curiosity is born. They begin to wonder what you're doing, who you're seeing, and why your energy doesn't revolve around them anymore. Living fully without them also means cultivating emotional independence. You no longer outsource your happiness to their responses, their texts, or their approval. Instead, you find ways to regulate yourself, to anchor your self-worth in your own values and progress. That doesn't mean you don't want connection, but it means you don't collapse without it. Avoidants, often overwhelmed by closeness, feel suffocated when someone depends on them for all their emotional needs. When they sense you can stand tall on your own, paradoxically they feel safer approaching you. Your independence doesn't push them away. It actually lowers the threat level for them and makes them more likely to lean in. There is also something magnetic about mystery, and that mystery comes alive when you are not constantly broadcasting your need for them. If you're busy living a rich life, you don't have the time to narrate your every move or explain your every feeling. You create a natural air of intrigue because you are moving through life with purpose, and they're not privy to every detail. That gap between what they know and what they don't know makes them lean forward. Obsession doesn't grow out of constant accessibility. It grows out of curiosity and a sense that there's something about you they haven't fully figured out. Most importantly, living fully without them is not just a tactic, it's a long-term strategy for your well-being. Even if that avoidant never changes, never steps up, or never returns, you will have invested in the one thing that always pays off your own growth. You'll have built resilience, self-respect, and a life that excites you with or without their presence. And if they do come back, they're coming back to someone whole, not someone waiting to be completed. That kind of power is irresistible, not just to avoidance, but to anyone. Because at the end of the day, the person who doesn't need to be chased is the one everyone wants to chase. Magnetism through independence is one of the most powerful forces in relationships, especially when dealing with avoidant personalities. Independence is not about cutting someone off, nor is it about pretending you don't care. It is about cultivating a life so rich, fulfilling, and purposeful that your happiness does not hinge on whether someone chooses you or not. When a person senses that you stand solidly on your own 2 feet, they cannot help but feel both respect and intrigue. This is particularly true with avoidants, who often fear being consumed by someone else's needs. The moment they realize that you are not depending on them to complete you, but instead are already complete within yourself, the balance of attraction shifts dramatically. Think about what happens when someone gives all of their time, energy, and emotional space to another person. At first, it might feel flattering, but eventually it becomes overwhelming. For avoidants, this sense of being overwhelmed arrives quickly. They start to feel like their personal space is under threat and their instinct is to retreat. Independence flips this script. Instead of feeling suffocated, they begin to sense freedom. They see you not as someone pulling them in, but as someone moving confidently in your own direction. This creates magnetism because people are drawn to what feels effortless, and independence communicates effortless strength. Independence is magnetic because it radiates a sense of abundance. You are showing that your world is already full of meaning, friends, hobbies, goals, passions. You are not waiting for them to light up your life, you have lit it up yourself. And when they see that, the energy around you changes. You no longer look like someone waiting for validation, you look like someone already validated by the life you live. This difference is subtle but undeniable. The person who doesn't need approval is the one whose approval feels most valuable. Another reason independence is magnetic is because it sparks curiosity. When you are not always available, not always explaining yourself, and not constantly in pursuit, people start to wonder about you. They wonder what you are doing, who you are with, and what excites you. That curiosity becomes a pull stronger than any words could create. Avoidants, in particular, respond to this dynamic because they are naturally cautious of closeness. They want to feel that the other person is not pushing them into a corner, but instead living freely, inviting them in without pressure. Your independence tells them that being with you is a choice, not a burden. And choices are always more appealing than obligations. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. When you show independence, you subtly communicate high value. You are telling the world without words that you are enough. People sense when someone is rooted in their own worth. That self-assuredness makes others want to be part of your world. Avoidants, who often keep their guard up, may lower it when they realize you are not there to take something from them, but simply to share what you already have. This makes them feel safe, and safety is the foundation of true attraction. Magnetism through independence is not about playing games or using silence as manipulation. It is about authenticity. It is about genuinely enjoying your life, pursuing your passions, nurturing your growth, and letting your fulfillment speak louder than your words. When you do that, avoidance, and really anyone begin to see you in a new light. They sense your strength, your self-sufficiency, and your mystery. That combination is irresistible because people are drawn to those who don't just exist but thrive on their own. And the moment you embody that independence, you stop asking how to make someone obsess over you because the truth is they already will. Mystery has always been one of the most powerful forces in attraction, but when it comes to avoidance, it becomes even more critical. People with avoidant tendencies often feel smothered when someone reveals every thought, every feeling, and every need too quickly. They pull away not necessarily because they don't care, but because their instinct is to protect their independence. When everything about you is laid bare, there's no space left for their curiosity to breathe. What makes them lean in, what makes them begin to obsess, is the unanswered question, what else is there to know about you? That question fuels their attention far more than any speech or declaration of love ever could. Mystery does not mean playing games or being manipulative. It means recognizing that attraction thrives on discovery. Think about how much more interesting a story is when it unfolds slowly, when every chapter reveals something new instead of giving the entire plot away on page one. Relationships work in much the same way. If you want to keep someone drawn to you, especially someone who has a pattern of withdrawing when they feel overwhelmed, you need to leave space for them to wonder. That wonder is what brings them closer. It makes them want to figure you out instead of running away from what feels like pressure. The mistake most people make with avoidance is that they try to prove their worth too quickly. They overshare, overexplain, and overinvest in the hope that the avoidant will finally open up. But what happens is the opposite. The avoidant feels cornered, like they have nothing left to learn about you, and the weight of expectation pushes them further into retreat. Mystery disrupts that cycle. When you hold back certain parts of your life, when you live in a way that isn't fully accessible to them, you stop being predictable. Predictability breeds boredom, and boredom is death to attraction. Mystery, on the other hand, stirs the imagination. It makes them play scenarios in their mind, and it makes them realize they don't have you as figured out as they thought. Another part of mystery is independence. When an avoidant sees that your happiness doesn't rely on them, that you have your own passions, your own friends, your own glow that shines even when they're absent, something shifts. They begin to wonder how it feels to be part of that world instead of feeling like they are your entire world. This reversal is crucial. It stops them from feeling trapped and starts making them feel intrigued. They begin to notice that your life has a rhythm they can't fully control or predict, and that sense of unpredictability is exactly what keeps their mind on you. Mystery also comes from restraint. You don't have to answer every message right away. You don't have to tell them every detail of your day. You don't need to justify why you're unavailable. Those small acts of restraint communicate that your life is full, that you are not sitting by the phone waiting. This isn't about manipulation, it's about dignity. You are showing, without words, that you have a life worth living, whether they step into it or not. That confidence and independence becomes magnetic. They begin to obsess not because you're chasing them, but because you're not. Ultimately, mystery creates obsession because it feeds the one thing human beings can't resist: curiosity. Curiosity is what makes us turn the page of a book, what keeps us watching a series episode after episode, what makes us want to solve a puzzle. With avoidance, curiosity is the bridge that pulls them back into connection. They may run from pressure, but they will always chase what they can't fully grasp. And when you embody mystery through independence, restraint, and self-worth, you become the puzzle they can't stop trying to solve.